right. Well, good morning. Glad you all are here. I think you all will be as impressed as I have been when I've heard just a little bit of Chief Hambrick's story. I have to kind of decide, do I call him Chief because he's the police chief in Mount Juliet, or do I call him Reverend because he co-pastors a Cumberland Presbyterian church? And part of one of the first questions I'm going to ask him, and I get to interview him, and if we have some time, you all can ask him questions too. James, can you tell us a little bit about your journey that has taken you to two places that you kind of we have to use our imagination to see how one person can do both, police, law enforcement, and church at the same time. Can you tell us how you've come to be able to do that?
First of all, thank you, Dr. Mike, and thank all of you. We thank Dr. Stum and the faculty here and students of Cumberland University. It's a pleasure to be here, and welcome all of you that are viewing this and will view it online. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to come and just share how we reconcile, I'll use that term, of these two different, as seen in most cases, these two different occupations, if you will, professions. I put them under one heading, and that is I'm a servant. So I'm a minister. Both of them fall to me in ministry. I get a call from God in the pastoral minister sense, but also get that same call in the area and ministry of law enforcement. The book of Romans, if you go to the 13th chapter of Romans, you will find that our authority, and I spoke this even at our, when I was in the police academy, I made this statement on our graduation day, is that our training we have got at and received at the academy, but our authority comes from God Almighty. And if you go to Romans 13, you will find the words that gives and speaks to that authority. But I view both positions, Dr. Mike, as a servant. I put them on the head, and I'm asked that question often of how do I do both? And to me, again, it's not two different things. To me, it all falls under the heading of ministry. When I try to lead the agency that I serve and the community that I serve in ministry, whether it's policing or whether it's pastoral, and I can say that we've been blessed, man, and I've been blessed personally of what God has allowed me to do and how He's allowed me to serve. And so I view both of them under the heading and banner of being a servant and ministry. And people, oftentimes say, well, how do you wear these different hats? To me, is one hat is servant. And so that's how I carry out. That's how the mindset that I go through.
One of my goals for the Chapel Chats is for us to realize that our individual story isn't really that different from the stories of others. Yeah, they're different, but there's a lot that's in common. Can you share with these college students your story through college? Did you attend college? Through college to your vocational discernment, because that's where they are in their life journey. They're trying to get through school, but they're also planning, once they finish, the next step. What will they do with their life? How did you wrestle with that and come to some clarity?
Thank you. Well, my prayer and desire is that you don't do like I did. As I was going through ministry because I've been in ministry a lot longer than policing. And so while I was going through a seminary, I went through 3 years and then took on a pastoral church and, stopped school for that year. So time passed on and I didn't go back to school, even though when I was in the Navy, prior to, I did 4 years in the Navy, and while I was in the Navy, I took some courses, college courses while I was in the Navy. But I got away from school with those 3 years under my belt, so to speak, and it wasn't until I was on the police force that I went back and decided to go back. And I told my wife at that time, I said, I'm going back to school. And I worked third shift. And for us, third shift, so you may know it, some people call it the graveyard shift, but it's 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And so while I was there, I told my wife, I said, I'm going back to school and I'm not going to finish, I'm not going to stop until I'm at the place where I want to be. And so I went back, finished my bachelor's, finished my master's, and finished my doctorate through working while I was working there on the third shift. And from that aspect, I would challenge you to keep going because it gets a little difficult as we get older to go and to reestablish and have to get into that routine of learning. But what I would encourage you to do is this mind that we have is so powerful, and God has given us the ability to, there's a battlefield that we have an enemy that's against us that would tell you what you can't do and what you can't be, and try to tell you differently who you are, differently from who God has created you to be and who God says that you are. And so with this mind, this battle, it starts here. It starts in the mind. And so I would encourage you to just have clear minds and understand that you can do all things the Scripture says through Christ who strengthens you. And that's what happens, is that when you have that mindset that I'm going to go and I'm not going to be deterred, I'm not going to be swayed, I'm not going to allow any detours to get in my path, and I'm going to just go ahead and just finish and have some identity of what I want to be and who I want to become, one profession I want to be a part of, and then work toward that goal of being that. The policing side of me is I'm just going to a little bit of a testimony, because the policing side of me, man, I still have family. Now, I've been in Mount Juliet for 26 years, and I still have family shake their head to you. Of all of our people in the family, you're the police, because guess what? I used to be on the other side of policing, if you know what I mean. And so the policing came, I was recruited in to policing. I worked third shift again, worked nights at one of the map codes in Mount Juliet, and I was assistant manager there. And while I was there, at night, the officers would come in, and several of them saw me and engaged and just looked at the way I did things, and they said, hey, we want to talk to the chief about getting you on. You ought to think about being a police officer. And I said, man, I got to pray about that. And after prayer, talking with my wife and everything, they said, well, chief wants you to come down and meet him and talk with him. And I said, again, man, that's something I have to pray about. Well, they would come in at nights and said, hey, chief wants you to come talk to him. Have you talked to him? Not yet. And this went on for some time. And finally, after much prayer, I went down and talked with the chief. And I told the chief these words. I said, Chief, I'm coming for a career. I said, I already have a job. I'm not coming just for a job. If I'm coming for a career. And I say, I give you this. What I do day one, I'll be willing to do to the end of that career, meaning in the same manner. And so God is blessed. But again, being away from school, man, it took some diligence to get back in and try to re-engage myself in going back to school and furthering that education. I would tell you, if that's the way the opportunities present themselves, by all means, hey, seize those moments. But if you have the opportunity to continue in education, I'll tell you this: it's easier while you are going to continue in that path.
I've got a son that has struggled with the disease of substance use disorder, and I've learned more about the justice system than I really want to know, and I think you have too. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, sure. As the way I lead is through accountability, through professionalism, and through integrity. And we, in our community in Mount Juliet, we're blessed. Our community knows I've been try to be as transparent to the extent we can be, have always done that, have always had that community mindset. I've got away from what people think because a lot of law enforcement, and we're seeing this play out in our culture and our nation today. Law enforcement for years have been a us against them mentality, meaning it's the police against everybody else. I never bought into that mindset. I never policed like that. And I said, it can't be us against them. We are them. And that's our motto at Mount Juliet's Community Strong. With that said, accountability is key. Integrity is paramount with me, and transparency. And so, as Dr. Mike has said, he had a son that has struggled with those issues. Well, I have a son who's on the other side of that. And I tell people all the time when I have an opportunity, especially when people bring their children to my office and things, and I tell them, I don't want you to be like my son. I said, because if you want to know where he is, he's in prison in Hartsville. And I said, you know who put him there? We did. And my officers did a great job. They didn't do anything that I didn't sign off on. But I make no bones about that. Again, as I said, accountability is key. And so probably my son had the mindset that, hey, my dad is chief. I can get by with some things. That won't happen. Whether you're my son, I tell people all the time, it's not, I don't play favorites. There are consequences to our actions. And he probably had thought, again, if my dad is the chief, I can get by with some things, but I hold my integrity to a high degree. I hold paramount and true to who I am and who God has called me to be. And so I don't give any favorites. Again, my desire is that through this process that he's learned and will come out being better than he was when he went in. But again, that's a choice that he has to make. My desire and my prayer is that he opts to make right choices when he's able to be released and come back out into society. But again, we're not talking about somebody that doesn't know any different. We're not talking about a teenager. We're not talking about, he is, I still call him, he's my son, so I call him young, but my son now is 41 years old, so we're talking about a man with a wife, with children of his own. And so he has to make those choices. And my prayer and desire is that when he's released, he will make the right choice. But if that choice is to come back out and come back into the community and just do illegal things, then as I spoke to a whole auditorium there at West Wilson Middle School one Saturday, I said, if people with substance abuse issues, if they want help, they can come to us on the front end and get help, and we will find a place and get them in a place of treatment to get them help. We'll do that. From a police perspective, we would do that. I said, but, and I use these words at Saturday, I said, but if you out here, you're willing and dealing and you're jiving and conniving, you're trying to be all that, I said, make no mistake about it. We're coming after you. And I said that Saturday, I said, I don't care if it's your people, your family, or my family. And it ended up being my family. So again, who I am as a man of God transcends who I am just as a policeman. The scripture, I rather, as the apostle said, we rather obey God than man. And so everything I do, I try to do it under that banner. That doesn't mean I'm perfect, but man, I'm striving to please the Almighty in everything that I do, whether it be in this occupation that He has me in, and just in life in general. But there are consequences to actions, and we hold people accountable. There are officers that I've had that I consider friends, man. That they're friends of mine, but I've had to set them across from my desk and tell them point blank, hey, I love you, but you can no longer work for me when they've done something out of the scope of the way we operate. And so that's just how I operate, man, under the guidance of the Lord.
James, I remember your being a part of a panel here last fall. It was sponsored by the Black Student Association. It was a panel of law enforcement people, and the topic was law enforcement and the community of color, whether it be African American or Hispanic, and I remember you're being personal about your own encounter as an African American man with law enforcement.
Sure.
Would you talk some about that and how you negotiate that today?
Thank you. If anyone was to come and say that we don't have challenges, there's no such thing as racism. There's no such thing as stereotypes. There's no such thing as what we would call DWB, and that stands for driving while black. If people say and try to put blinders on and say those things that don't occur, they'd be sadly mistaken, because we live in this fallen world and we live in an age where these issues are real. We know that right now the nation will be focused on a trial in the George Floyd murder that's coming up, and those issues are real. Being a black man, I experienced it, as you said, Mike. I had experienced myself. I was driving. I had a 76 Cutlass Supreme, kind of souped up, looked good, and I wish I still had that car, matter of fact, but I had that car. I was off at the time. I told you I worked third shift, but this was during the day. I had a t-shirt on, I had my sunglasses on, I had my hat on backwards, and I'm driving in my neighborhood going to my house. I get to a four-way stop, and I remember this clearly. I stopped, and it was a female driving a Ford Ranger to make a left turn, and so I motioned for her to come and make a left, and after she did, I was making a left, and had my blinker, everything on, and I made a left. And the next thing I know, I saw blue lights behind me, and I'm wondering, I said, well, I wonder what they have. And this was the sheriff department, another agency. I wonder what they have. And They were pulling me, and I said, "Oh, they have me." So I pulled over. Didn't jump out of the car. Didn't do crazy things, get loud. And the officer said, "You know the reason I stopped you?" I said, "No, I don't." He said, "You went right through, straight through that stop sign." I said, "Straight through?" So when he asked for my license and everything, I gave him out, and I held out gave him a wallet to get out my license. He said, "Well, what's that?" And I said, "What's that?" And he was talking about my badge. And I said, "This?" He said, "Oh, man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean this." And I said, I told him then, because in the neighborhood, there were drug issues and things. I said, "I don't mind you guys being in here cleaning up." I said, "I want that more than anything." I said, "But we're going to do it the right way. It's going to be done the right way." And so those challenges, I know that we still face. We have work to do as far as those relationships. And so I have to be a champion, again, of doing things the right way. And, until we sit down and have meaningful conversations when we talk about race relations, until we sit down with one another, not in a big conference, not even like this. What it's going to take is for people of different colors, ethnicities, and everything to sit down and have meaningful conversations one with another. That's how we're going to change the paradigm of what's going on in our nation. And we have to begin. Each one of us have to start. We can't look at somebody else to start and say when they start. No, it has to begin with me. And so each one of us have to do our part to bring about a healing, if you will, in this arena. And we're grateful that there are some things being done that people may not see, you may not see right now, that are being done behind the scenes to address these issues and to stop, just like Officer Chauvin, to stop issues like that from being perpetrated. Because I feel, and I call it like I see it, I call the George Floyd incident a murder. It was senseless. It has no been, we don't train like that. And so you're hearing it from somebody in law enforcement that I don't agree with it one bit. I'm against it 100%. But there were issues with that officer beforehand, okay, that should have been addressed. And so from a national perspective, there's a national database out now that's when we have officers that call them rogue officers, bad officers, whatever, information is put into this database that people can asset and get to be able to see. For instance, say if they just, officers all the time move from one agency to another agency, and you don't know the things everything that's transpired with an officer. And so a bad apple just moves from one location to another location. So there are some issues there that we're trying to address on a national perspective so that won't happen, and we can get a hold on these type of things. But to say that it doesn't exist, we would be lying to ourselves. It does exist. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And that starts with us. And grateful, again, accountability. Accountability is key.
There's a debate as to whether our justice system should lean toward punishment or rehabilitation and restoration. Again, from personal knowledge, I know that if you're young and you do something you later come to regret, it can stick with you the rest of your life. which undermines your ability to get back and be a good person contributing to society. What's your thought on, I read that a state just recently said, if your record has anything to do with drugs, we're going to wipe it out. If it was just you, if you weren't selling, but you were using and you've got a felony, we're gonna wipe that out so you don't have to live with that the rest of your life. What's your thought about how we can change our law enforcement justice system so it can be more redemptive? Would be a way to put it, I think.
If for me, everyone, that I don't think we could just paint that with a broad brush. There are certain instances where you have to look at individual basis, and everything has a nexus to it. So you have to look beyond just the charge at that time. There are other issues that need to be factored in. But from a redemptive standpoint, I say that I believe that we can, have help, that we can get redemption, that we can have reconciliation in some of those areas. But I believe that it starts, again, with an individual. The thing about people wanting help, people wanting to be in recovery and want to recover, if you will, again, that has to be a choice. And that some of the things that from a incarceration process, there are some things that are available within the penal institutions and things, and within the criminal justice institutions, that there are programs and things that are set that to help that a lot of people don't take advantage of. And I know a lot of people don't take advantage of. You say, how do you know that? Because up until COVID hit, well before COVID hit, downtown Nashville, the criminal justice center there, when they tore down the old one and they were going to rebuild, before they tore down that old one, I was a part of a team that went down, myself and another guy, Dr. Bryson, we went down every third Sunday of the month and ministered down in the jails there, down in the criminal justice center, and had an opportunity to talk to individuals, these guys, and see where they were. And if they were part of a process to get help even while they were inside of the criminal justice system, by way of training, by way of classes, by way of different things. There are things that are accessible if they want the help. And so that has to be a part of it. And so I don't think we can just have a broad brush and just paint everything. I do think that reform is key, and to maybe there needs to be an overhaul and a reformation of the entire system, so that people can have a chance. People can have a chance just because you have maybe it's what we term a minor drug charge. That shouldn't hang over you all your life. But I believe that the person has something to say about that as well, and should have. I mean, if a person's attitude hasn't changed, if a person's mindset haven't changed, if they're continually going back into that same environment and things and not wanting to make a change, I think that then you have to, as we say I just use the analogy of traffic enforcement. When we say traffic enforcement, not everybody gets a citation just because you're stopped. That officer has discretion. Some officer may say, hey, you need to slow down. Other officer may say, let me see your license and everything, and write your citation. And so we do know from a percentage fact that people don't really slow down until you get in their pocket, as we say, until they have to pay something and have to, and it costs them something. And so with that same, in that same vein, I think with these drug charges, as you alluded to, I think something has to be paid. People, when they have an investment, I'm also a counselor, a licensed counselor, and within the counseling arena, people that I do pro bono work, that I'm gonna counsel you, and I'm not gonna charge it. It's not gonna be any charge, and I go. They don't take it to heart the same as those that have to make an investment within it. Those that I see making an investment adhere more so to the counseling that is taking place. So in that same area, I think within our legal system, I don't just think wiping it away. I think there needs to be some type of investment given. And but I do believe that you can overcome, that an individual can overcome. It's been demonstrated so many times over and over in the history of our nation, just in our nation. I'm not going to say the world, just in our nation. It's been demonstrated over and over and over again, just because even if you have a felony, it may hold you back from some things, but your mindset, your determination, your choice, and everything, how you own something, and then what you aspire to be, you can overcome it. I do know that because it's been done. It's been proven over and over again.
You've brought back a couple of memories. One is my father was a criminal investigator for the Navy back when the Naval Air Station was still active and outside of Memphis. And he decided to go back to college. He wanted to be an FBI person. At the time, you had to have a degree in accounting and something else for some reason. He never did get that. He never did get to achieve his dream of working for the FBI. But he went back to school on the base. He could take courses. I think the University of Memphis had courses. And as it turned out, he graduated the same year I did. We graduated together. The other memory is, my last church was the Methodist church here in town, and I had a church member who served time in that Hartsville jail. And he now is in the justice system here in the county. So you can always take past experience and use it for good. One last question I have, and then I want to open it up. Explain how this co-pastorate situation is working with you and another pastor having merged two churches, which sounds like a miracle to me. Trying to keep one together is a miracle. Put two together, and that's a double one. So how did you pull that off?
Thanks. Man, we're blessed. I'm a co-pastor at Cumberland Presbyterian Church in Mount Juliet. And how that happened, I was pastoring a non-denominational ministry church called the Barn Church. We were having our services at a location called the Circle P Ranch. They have a restaurant in this thing, and we were using that area for our church. We had outgrown the area that we were previously at, and someone, this is right behind, it almost looked like it's on the same property of Cloet's, Cumberland Presbyterian Church. You share the same street going through it, but someone coming to visit our church went to Cloet's Cumberland Presbyterian Church and was asking for us. And Pastor Mike said, "No, I know him, but I don't know about a church." But they end up being behind him. Anyway, a long story short, Pastor Mike reached out to me, and the church, Cloet's, had been with their elders and their ministry team, had been seeking out and having a visioning session of what they wanted the church and the direction they wanted the church to go to. And so one of those keys in that visioning was to finding another church to partner with. And when he first contacted me, I didn't even respond for about a month. Through email, he contacted me about it. And then one day later, he called me. And after prayer, with that month time, I began to go in prayer about it. And one Saturday, Mike's wife and I, Penny, and him and Penny and myself and Denise, my wife, met together, really heard one another's heart. And all this time, in this 30 days, I was looking into their doctrine and everything like that. And so I was up on their doctrine. One, I had a little bit of an edge. My uncle used to pastor a Presbyterian church in Columbia years ago when I was a teenager, so I had a little bit, but I really looked into and dived into the doctrine, and the doctrine was sound. What I did, because it was different, the way our service was, the way that their worship service was different, quite honest. And so what I've learned to do is to give up my preference for God's will. And I've learned to do that. I've learned to, hey, I'm going to put my preference on the back burner and yield ultimately to God's will. And once we've done that, I mean, it's been a beautiful thing. One reason it's been so dynamic, because it's said, it's said that it can't happen. You can't co-pastor. Well, the thing is, if you check your egos, you can co-pastor. Ego is the biggest thing, and there's no ego there. Mike and I, we've had a beautiful time. Just like yesterday I preached, the Sunday prior to that he preached, and we just share those duties. One of the things, it gives an excitement, because it seems that the Lord uses us to flow off of one another, and our congregation gets two different dynamics, and it's a wonderful thing. We've even, part of that visioning was to bring in another pastor that is there, because Mike and I were both bivocational. So to bring in a pastor that was there full-time, that would concentrate on our young adults and our youth and everything. And so we brought in Kenny Butcher, which was a lead pastor of a church in Nashville, and now he's with us. And so the three, I call us three amigos. We're having a great time. And again, we just recently, there's a biker church, Soul Revival Biker Church, that's in Mount Juliet. And we just recently, this past Friday, they have their services on Friday night. So on Friday night, we've allowed them now to use our facility, and they use we have a fellowship hall that has like a gym component, and they use that on Friday nights. And so, we encourage members to go to their service. They have members that come to our service, and it's just a great thing, because we're talking about eternity and what heaven looks like. It's not going to look like one thing. It's not going to look like one race of people. It's not going to look at one kind. When you go to the biker church, and Pastor Chris, he's got on his biker gear and everything. And when he came to me, and I'm a suit man. I like suits. That's not because I'm a preacher or anything. I've been wearing, my senior year in high school, I wore a suit every day. I just like suits. And so, suit man, I said, but now, Chris, I said, I'm the minority. And because nobody, not too many people wear suits and things to church anymore. But we're having a beautiful time. And I told him this, and I tell everybody this. You've heard the term, and I mean it, I bring it to heart. Do you. And what I mean by that is, man, God has created you. being in your style. But me, if I could go now, well, hey, Pastor Chris got on a biker vest. I can go out, I'm gonna buy me a biker vest, and I'm gonna no. Do you? When I was pastoring the barn church started out, we were in an actual barn. You had to go around tractors and lawnmowers and all this thing to get to it. And I still, I had on my suit and I went around those things because that's who I am. Be comfortable in who you are. Because if you're struggling, man, with your identity of who you are, especially, and now I'm talking about especially as a believer. If you're a believer in Jesus Christ, man, be comfortable in that and who you are. And because when you try to put on a mask and wear something different and be something different, you cause stresses in your life that are not necessary. I deal with the type of counseling that I do. I'm a temperament counselor. I deal with temperament. And man, we say this, that your personality is who we allow people to see, but the temperament is who God has created you, is inborn. And the farther away those two differences are, the more stresses there are in your life. Because you want people to see this, but you're really this here. And so I just know in our congregation, man, and what God has done by surrendering and people saying it can't be done, I just know God has a plan, and when we operate in His plan, man, things go well. And so we're having I said that to say that we're having a beautiful time. If you want to join us sometime, we're located at 595 West Division Street in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, and we love to see you. We're having a beautiful time. Again, no big I's, no little U's. Hey, we're one in Christ Jesus. And humility, I would say this, anybody saying that something can't be done, if you humble yourself, hey, it can be done, I guarantee you.
You all know that Cumberland today is not affiliated with any Christian denomination, but in its history it has been. It has been affiliated with the Cumberland Presbyterian Church at one time. It's also been affiliated for a brief period of time with the Southern Baptist Church, I think. Right now, it has no specific affiliation, but it does value the spiritual dimension of our lives as human beings. We've got a minute or two. Would you like to ask Chief Hambrick, Reverend Hambrick, a question? Did he stir something up that you would like to pursue a little bit more with him, or do you just have a question you'd like to ask him? Anyone? Professors, teachers, a question? I think they're just like me, so impressed. They don't have a word, except thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being who you are, because I imagine, like for most of us, we have to work at being who we are, because we are tempted to feel like in order to be accepted, we have to be somebody else or something else. So thank you for being who you are.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming today.